and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hey guys, hello and welcome everybody. This is again Joe from Startuprad.io, the authority on German startups, meaning Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, the German-speaking area. Today I have two announcements up front. If I'm not on top of my game, I'm really sorry. If you can see in YouTube, I'm chafed, so I'm in back pain. And so I'm not necessarily on top of my game. And then I do have an opening question for you guys. If Excel would be a dating app, what would it be called? And now imagine Jeopardy music. How about the hookup? The reason for this joke is that today I do have Torben here with me. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Totally my pleasure. And the spreadsheet jokes comes from what you guys actually doing. You guys are rose.com. And as you can already deduce, that is a new spreadsheet app for the API generation. But before we get into that and why on earth anybody would do spreadsheets when there's already Excel from Microsoft and Google Sheets from Google, which are not necessarily the smallest tech companies. They are also known to be quite rich in resources and also very good coders. I would like to first talk a little bit about you, what you're doing, and why you are in a phone booth that apparently was constructed by a Dadaist.
Yeah, well, where should I start? Just what I did before I started becoming founder, or why I'm in the phone booth. It's I'm here in my office, and the phone booth was is just my favorite room because it's so controlled and nicely lit up above me.
Yes, exactly. We've been working on the lighting for quite some time, and in some things we tried out, you rather look like you were from the movie The Shining. So we settled on the best we could make there. It's also very good for the audio quality of this interview. So thank you very much for that. What I found pretty interesting is that you speak three languages fluently. German, of course, English, as we can tell, but also French. And you've been to Montpellier. Can you tell us a little bit about what drew you to France and what have been your experiences there?
Well, I also speak Portuguese, by the way. I used to live in Brazil for 3 years, which was a great time too. But indeed, I went first to Montpellier, yeah. And what drew me to French? Well, I don't really know, to be honest. It was just something at high school that I liked and that I spent a bit of time on, and then in German high school, you have to choose two specializations, and I chose French and math. Yeah, and then I went on multiple exchange programs, and I liked the language, and I liked learning it and speaking it. And then when I went to study at university, I chose a program where I could do a double degree that was in Germany and in France. And so I got to spend more than 1 year there, half of which in Montpellier, half of which in Paris, and I had an amazing time. I think from a German perspective, spending some time in the city in southern France, close by the beach, and where the weather is nice, and then some time in Paris, I think it's the perfect mix.
Yes, indeed. I've also been to Paris and I really loved it, especially the food there. It's just amazing, and the croissants from Paul's. Just to challenge your language skills just a tiny bit before we get further, what would be the authority on German startups in Portuguese or French, or maybe both?
The authority, you mean translating this?
Our slogan, the authority on German startups.
I guess in French it would be l'autorité des startups allemandes or allemand, and in Portuguese it would be a autoridade dos startups alemães.
Okay, language check. And actually, French is such a wonderful language. It always sounds like a love letter. Ah, so great. And after you graduated, you've been actually working as a consultant with Roland Berger. What did you do there? And actually, you've also been here in Frankfurt and in Sao Paulo.
Yeah, that's right. So, well, after university, so there are different types of entrepreneurs, and there are these people who can only found companies and only work on their ideas and spit them out into the world. They would never be able to work under a boss, etc. I'm not exactly of this type of entrepreneurs. So my journey is quite different. I come from a family that I think was quite the opposite of entrepreneurship. And then after university, I was just absolutely not ready to start founding companies immediately. I think it was just too scary for me. And then I went into something that I liked, where I could continue learning fast, work with great people, and stay flexible. And that was for me consulting. Yeah. And and so I joined a company called Roland Berger, which is quite large in Germany, one of the larger management consulting firms in Germany. And I started actually working in Frankfurt, mostly with public sector clients, yeah. Because I like that. So making an impact in the public sector, and I started working on mostly organizational topics. For example, for the employment agency here in Germany, or a couple of these types of clients. Um, and after 2 years, me and my wife wanted to kind of a new challenge and see something new, and so we got to be transferred to Brazil, to Sao Paulo in Brazil, by our employers. And there I continued to do consulting, mostly in the automotive sector. So when I was there in I think 2010, it was the year when Brazilian GDP grew by 7.5%. So everybody thought Brazil was the new China, and everybody wanted to enter the market, and so that gave consultants a lot of work, and that's the type of work that I did. Yeah? And then, well, Brazil unfortunately did not turn out to be the next China in terms of growth rates, but it's still an amazing country.
Yeah, and they still have a lot of potential. They have a lot of area, a lot of resources, and a lot of very, very smart young people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brazil is the country of potential. Yeah, so I very much hope for them that they can grasp that potential and turn it into something real soon.
That would be great. And then you did something completely unexpected for consultant. You attended a master's, but a master's in public administration at Harvard Kennedy School. And before we get into that, everybody who knows that you have been a consultant, everybody knows why you're working with spreadsheets. And I do believe at this point in the interview, only the people who found the first spreadsheet joke funny are still with us here.
Exactly. It was a great joke. Great joke.
So why did you not go for the classical MBA? Was it your background?
Well, I had already studied business in Germany and in France, so I think repeating that again wasn't really kind of the best thing that I could imagine. After 5 years in consulting, I knew that I wanted to get out of consulting, because I was kind of tired to give only recommendations, but not really implement decisions and then also be accountable for them. So I wanted just more responsibility, but I wasn't really sure in what type of environment yet. So I was very interested in international affairs, or in kind of, well, diplomacy. But I was also very interested in startups. So in a very particular type of, well, the business world. And the place where I could kind of expose myself and think about both sides was Harvard Kennedy School, because it was a super flexible 2-year program where I could kind of improve on kind of soft skill stuff. I could expose myself definitely to international affairs and security policy and so on. But I could also cross-register across Cambridge, which included the MIT and Harvard Business School, and this is where I could pick up all the startup relevant stuff. And so it was a great time. Well, personally, I think also to think and make up my mind, and then for mostly for practical reasons, and because I really wanted kind of something very dynamic in the end, I chose the startup world.
And from what you've been also a teaching assistant there. What do you do? What did you do there? Just checked exams?
No, not at all. That was a really, really interesting experience. So I worked with this professor called Ron Heifetz, and he is kind of a superstar in what is called adaptive leadership. And his class was essentially a half circle of students, 120 students in one room, and the it was a case in point teaching method, which meant that the professor would largely sit down, and then the students were their own leadership lab. And so people try all sorts of things to get kind of the attention and command the agenda of a classroom of 120 people, but without any kind of authority, they get shut down quite soon. And then at any point, people could kind of raise their hand and say, well, I want to debrief what just happened or so, but they might get shut down too. And so over the course of semester, you kind of work yourself through any sort of, well, leadership dynamic and societal injustices and so on. And then you debrief this in small groups, in case studies that people bring of their own leadership failures from their professional lives. And so as a teaching assistant, I could kind of help orchestrate all this chaos. And that was fascinating what came out of it. Yeah.
When you first talked about all the people talking with each other, what I had in mind was the professor sitting there with a big headset, like the sledgehammer guys, the yellow ones that have on their head, and he was just sitting there, just observing, ignoring the words, just observing the people. That would be a job for me.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It sounds like a dream job, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
at some point he would stand up and then help debrief or find a segue into some sort of leadership framework that he would then teach at the example of what had just happened, right? And so that was kind of his role. So he did a bit more for a living than sitting around and watching chaos unfold.
Okay, I see. And then you kind of caught the startup bug, because from there you, as far as I can tell, you went straight to Berlin and started your first startup. Why did you decide on Berlin, and what was the startup all about?
Okay, well, first Berlin. I am German, so I think going back to Germany was very much in the cards for me for kind of, well, private reasons, I would say. And then I actually got in touch with a couple of people in the Berlin startup world, and started discussing with them. Among them were the leaders of Rocket Internet, Olli Samwer and Alex Kudlich, and who were at the height of their incubation game, right? So they were kind of taking business models that they saw from the US largely, and then trying to build the same fast for Europe or some other part of the world. And I found it a great segue for me because at the time I was already a father, I already had a kid, so I couldn't just bootstrap for years before well I could make any money. So I found that as a segue into the startup world for me, from consulting and from university again or grad school again, into the role of a founder, I thought that this kind of thing with Rocket, where you know that you get less equity, but still a consultant-like salary, would be great. Yeah, and so this is what I did. And then we were three co-founders in a company called Eat First, which was completely vertically integrated food delivery, including the kitchen part. So we used to cook meals and employ chefs and build restaurants or build kitchens at least, and then deliver these meals hot and sell them on the internet.
Sounds like what you call a cloud kitchen, ghost kitchen company.
Yes, but let's say a cloud kitchen plus a Uber Eats or Deliveroo or Foodora at the same time, or Volt nowadays.
Mhm. Before we get into Rose, I would just like to pick your brain. What do you think about those instant delivery, like grocery food delivery startups you see springing up all over the place, turning into unicorns in less than 12 months?
Yeah, well, I think it's fascinating, and I can absolutely see the growth. I'm a customer myself for sure. Um, After my own experience, I am concerned about the unit economics of these types of businesses and about the long term viability. I hope that these companies will prove me wrong, but I well. As an investor, I it's probably not where I would put my money. I think I feel much more comfortable about software.
Mhm. Talking about software, then you went on to do your own thing called Rose, which you incorporated 2016 in Berlin. No surprise here. And I would be curious about the reactions of some of your former colleagues, like former consultants, current consultants, and you said, "Hey guys, I'm reinventing spreadsheets."
Yes, well, consultants specifically are very much in Excel's pocket, and I think their number one problem with Excel is that they cannot, for some reason, abuse it as a database. So just load in SAP data dumps with a million rows and then crunch that data, and then unfortunately it becomes slow, right? And it becomes slow to load and slow to compute and so on. So this is, I think, the number one spreadsheet problem in consulting. And well, and then with Excel as well, kind of the collaboration part and the version history or version control part. But this was actually not the type of problem exactly that we wanted to solve in spreadsheets. We wanted to solve something different. But of course, they were interested as a consultant. I think naturally you're a spreadsheet user, but they were also curious, like, why there's like we have Excel, and do you want to make a faster Excel? Do you want to make an Excel that doesn't take a minute to load, or this type of thing? I think was the number one question. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've actually been starting to use it, and actually, I would say right now it's not really a competitor of Excel or Google Sheets because it's its own thing. Because you can do a lot more with, I would say, everything around it. So you do have a lot of connection points, APIs, where you can draw in data, which makes it instantly usable. For example, I've been manually tracking my social media followership for quite some time. And actually, right now, I just had the template. I set it up. I approved some logins, some data requests with my social media accounts, and I had set it up within 15 minutes, which I actually use every day. And then you do have quite a lot of other interesting stuff. Some of it, I do believe, is really, really amazing because you do get to pay hundreds of euros a month. For example, if you want to have the email addresses of CEOs when you try to cold mail them or cold call them. And actually what you can do is you set up a spreadsheet, you know the name of the CEO, you know the URL of the company, and boop, it'll find it for you. That is quite amazing. Plus, I'm not sure how much other company charge you just to keep the track on your social media accounts.
Mm-hmm. Well, so as a bit of background about rows and the types of problems that we want to solve. So we went into spreadsheets because we thought that there were two essential problems with spreadsheets. So Excel or VisiCalc, only two? Only two? You sure? Two kind of large buckets that we wanted to address. Yeah. So Excel is from, or VisiCalc is from 1979. Yeah, so it was invented more than 40 years ago. And then the last big spreadsheet invention was Google Sheets, that was invented in 2006. That was the year before the iPhone was invented. Yeah, so the last big spreadsheet invention is older than the iPhone. And with that comes the first problem. So spreadsheets were invented because people really went into smartphones and really went into the app economy. Yeah, and that is you cannot share spreadsheets nicely on a phone, or not nicely at all, really. It always looks like a spreadsheet. Yeah. And with rows, you can turn your spreadsheet into a web page or into a web app into just 2 clicks. So you take any spreadsheet, say, I want to publish this live as a web app. And then you can pick certain fields like drop downs or buttons or checkboxes or input fields, and make these apps interactive, and they will look nice on your phone. The charts will come out nicely. So if you ever try to open a Google Sheets on your cell phone, it's usually a nightmare, the experience. And this is kind of one thing that we want to solve. And the second thing is both Excel and Google Sheets were invented before kind of this spread of APIs and of SaaS tools, right? Now we live in this world where all these tools need to talk to each other, and we're all kind of, every knowledge worker is handling 5 to 15 different tools and data sources. And we wanted to make it easy for people to work with this data. So that's why we invented kind of integrations and web requests to APIs as functions that you can kind of send from within your cell without the need to actually write a script, or a Python script, VBA, a Google App script, or the like. You can just use spreadsheet-like functions and work with your data, and also automate it, make it execute functions periodically, and so on. So those are the two big things. And then, as you rightly mentioned, so that means you can easily use it, for example, for your social media tracking, track followers across all your social media channels, track mentions of certain hashtags on Twitter or so. Those would be kind of easy use cases to start with, but you can work kind of into, you can go into full-on reporting with a nice dashboard, a nice set of charts across, let's say, all your marketing data, or all your operations data that you get from an API or so. Yeah? But you can also use it to build, for example, internal tools that are, you can also publish your spreadsheet as a form, and then create databases with the data that is submitted through the form, and then define actions based on this data. So there are kind of various ways how you can use rows as an automation layer that would not be possible in normal spreadsheets. And the last thing that you mentioned, so we have these integrations that lead actually to public data sources. So, for example, you can find the domain for a company name, or you can find the email to the name of a person and the domain, or you can enrich a domain with the LinkedIn information about this company, how many employees they have, and so on. So it's a bit like, well, Google Sheets has this a little bit with, for example, Google Finance or Google Translate, and we really take this absolutely to the next level with kind of publicly available information.
But just to make sure, your future scenario is not to sell yourself to Google.
No, this is absolutely not the plan. I mean, we are not dogmatic as business people, I would say, but I think it would be a waste to sell to Google or Microsoft because it would be a defensive acquisition, and we would probably be shut down after 2 years or so. So the plan would first and foremost be well, grow on our own and be successful and become a large company ourselves. And well, if we get acquired at some point, I would much rather sell to a challenger of these two large incumbents than to them to the incumbents themselves.
So we already know a lot about you. We kind of get an idea what Rose really is. Admittedly, I had to use it, but if you go to rose.com, you can get an account for free and you can start trying stuff out. That's actually what I did. And then I started to understand what are all the possibilities, but there have to be a few use cases you're currently pushing that people out there could use, where you see a future in, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I think most people who start using us would want to start with something easy, like let's say just privately with stock portfolio tracking or crypto portfolio tracking. We have a lot of users doing that with Rose, where you just use an integration to get your stock or crypto data. You can automate it so that it runs every hour, every day, or every week, depending on how fast you need updates, and then you can just kind of create beautiful charts and consume them, including on your phone, right? And the charts will always be live and updated because you can set these automations in Rose very easily. A second thing would, for example, be for social media accounts like you're using it, Joe. So you can connect your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and then start counting followers. And you can also create a database of these followers. Like every day you add the current number, and then you see the development of your followership over time. In a chart, I think this would be kind of a second way, but there are a bunch of marketing integrations, including Google Analytics or Google Ads, or well, all the ad integrations is what we have. Some people build these types of reports just with data from their own APIs or with third-party APIs. That is a little more difficult because you need to understand how to use a GET request. But you don't need to you don't need to do it in a script. You can just use a function called GET and then point to the API endpoint, and then you would get your data in, right? But those are kind of very typical things people start with.
And looking a little bit in the future. So basically, if you're a startup entrepreneur, you can set it up to track your ad spending, your social media growth, and match this in graphics and stuff like this. So that is something really great. You can, of course, also put in internal KPIs and stuff like this. I totally assume you can upload data from Google Sheets and Excel into it.
Yes, absolutely. So you can well, copy pasting works in both directions. We have an integration with Google Sheets, so you can actually read from Google Sheets and write to Google Sheets through our integration. And we are about to release our import feature for CSV and XLSX files. So this is not in the product right now, but I think at the time you publish this episode, it will already be out, and people will be able to import their existing spreadsheets easily.
You are kind of testing out where this is all working. Where are the killer applications right now? As far as I can see, you've already raised Series B funding, total 25 million so far. And the investors are very well-known names like Sherry Ventures, Atlantic Labs, Excel, and two business angels. So apparently everybody sees that there is a need for better spreadsheets. Of course, also for better spreadsheet jokes. If you have some, give them to us down here in the comments or tweet them at Startuprad.io. Are you currently open to talk to new investors?
Right now we are not really, but the time will come quite soon. So I think by the end of this year, we will kind of be looking for new funding again. So we had 3 rounds of funding led by Cherry Ventures, then Excel and Lakestar. So we're super happy with the set of investors that we have, and yeah, they all believe in the opportunity of creating a better spreadsheet. It's a huge market with 1 billion users, right? So every 7th person in the world is a spreadsheet user in a way, which is super large, and we see kind of this revolution in productivity tools in general. So obviously, a lot of people are using Microsoft Office and a lot of people are using Google Workspace, but there are a lot of challengers popping up, like Notion, for example, or Pitch here from Berlin as well for presentations. And nobody is really attacking the spreadsheet side. Yeah. But there's us. So we are probably trying to pick on the crown jewels of Microsoft Office because it's really kind of the number one productivity tool. And we all think that we can build a very, very large company just with the spreadsheets, right?
Yeah, it's I do believe the first step, and as you said, every 1 billion users of spreadsheet. I was wondering only 1 billion, and then he said every 7th person in the world. I thought, yeah, that's about right, and 50% of them totally hate it. And they drive them crazy. And therefore, we've been both working quite a lot with spreadsheets, I assume. And therefore, we try to make it pretty light. Before we come to the end, I have another one for you. Another joke, spreadsheet joke. What do humans and spreadsheets have in common? They are all made out of cells.
True, absolutely.
Yeah,
the smallest unit of life. The smallest unit of life. Yeah. It's indeed true for both.
Maybe also the smallest unit in finance. Torben, it was just a pleasure having you here. Before we leave now, are you guys currently hiring?
We are, absolutely. So if you look on our hiring page, rose.com/hiring, you will see open positions. We actually turned the company remote recently. So we have 2 offices in Berlin and in Porto, Portugal. And now we are actually hiring across 23 countries. So the US, Brazil, and 21 European countries. That was kind of a large change that we implemented in the last couple of months.
And everybody who'd like to learn more, go down here in the show notes. There will be a link to our new Medium blog. As of today, we completely changed our setup. There's only landing page, and everything we used to have on our website is now on a blog because apparently I've lost some hair, and most of it is due, of course, to spreadsheets, and the other part due to keeping this WordPress website working with all the plugins that went to war with each other. And so we completely changed the setup here. We now have a Medium blog, and you find it with the show notes down here. Torben, it was just a pleasure having you as a guest. Thank you very much, and best of luck. And I'm afraid I'm out of spreadsheet jokes right now.
Thank you very much. So if you still hear this, rose.com, create an account for free. We'd love to see you as users, and I hope you keep using us too, Joe. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great. I had a great time.
Totally my pleasure. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.